The knock came at 8:30 on a July evening in 1878, so faint Vincent Farlow nearly missed it over the sound of his own boots on the hardwood floor. He paused, whiskey glass halfway to his lips, listening to the silence of his ranch house in the Kansas prairie just outside Leavenworth. There it was again, barely more than a scratching, desperate and weak. When he pulled open the door, the woman collapsed forward into his arms, her lips cracked and bleeding, her dress caked with dust so thick he couldn't tell what color it had been. Her dark hair hung in matted tangles, and her skin burned with fever against his forearm. "Water," she whispered, the word more breath than sound. "Please." Vincent caught her weight easily, his rancher's strength taking the burden without thought. He kicked the door wider and carried her inside, laying her on the settee near the window. In the lamplight, he could see she was young, maybe 20 or so, with delicate features beneath the grime and sunburn. Her lips moved soundlessly, still forming that same plea. He grabbed the pitcher from his table and poured water into a tin cup, then knelt beside her. "Easy now," he said, lifting her head with one calloused hand. "Small sips or you'll be sick." She drank like someone drowning, clutching at his wrist with surprising strength. Water spilled down her chin and neck, darkening the dust on her dress. When he pulled the cup away, she made a small sound of protest. "More in a minute," Vincent said firmly. "Let that settle first. Where did you come from?" Her eyes, he noticed, were a startling green made brighter by the redness surrounding them. She tried to speak, coughed, and he gave her another small sip. "The wagon train," she finally managed. "We got separated. Storm 3 days ago. I walked, but I could not find them. I saw your lights from the ridge. 3 days in the Kansas summer without water would kill most people." Vincent studied her more carefully, noting the expensive buttons on her dress despite its ruined state, the pale band on her left ring finger where a glove had protected the skin. "What is your name?" he asked. Hannah Daniels." Her eyes fought to stay open. "I am from Boston. We were heading to California. My father, he is taking us to start a business in Sacramento." Vincent let her drink more, then fetched a basin of water and a clean cloth. "We need to get you cooled down and cleaned up. That fever is not good." "I am sorry," Hannah whispered as he began to wipe the dust from her face. "I did not mean to intrude." "You knocked on the right door," Vincent said. The cloth came away black with dirt and dust. Beneath it, her skin was pale where it was not burned, her features refined and eastern. "My spread has the best water source in this part of Kansas. Natural spring that never runs dry, feeds everything you can see from that ridge you mentioned." She was already slipping toward unconsciousness, her body giving in to exhaustion now that it had found safety. Vincent worked methodically, cleaning her face and hands, removing her boots to find her feet blistered and bloody. He had seen men die of thirst on cattle drives, had pulled more than one son, mad traveler, from the prairie. She was lucky to be alive. When he had done what he could without impropriety, Vincent fetched blankets and made her as comfortable as possible on the settee. He would ride to town in the morning, fetch the doctor, and ask about any word of a lost wagon train. For now, he settled into his chair with his forgotten whiskey and watched her sleep, this unexpected visitor who had stumbled into his carefully ordered life. Vincent had inherited the ranch from his father 5 years ago, when he was just 23. The elder Farlow had built it from nothing, claiming the land and fighting to keep it through drought and harsh winters. The spring had been the key to everything, bubbling up from deep underground to create a ribbon of green in the golden prairie. It fed the creek that watered his cattle, nourished the cottonwoods that shaded his house, and made the grass grow thick and sweet. Other ranchers paid him for water rights in dry years. The spring had made the Farlow name mean something in Leavenworth County. Now here was this Boston girl, nearly dead from want of the very thing he had in abundance. Vincent sipped his whiskey and thought about the strange turns life took. If she had walked another direction from wherever she got lost, she would be dead now, her bones bleaching in the sun like so many others who underestimated this land. Hannah stirred in her sleep, whimpering. Vincent rose and dampened the cloth again, laying it across her forehead. Her skin still burned too hot. He had seen fever take people, watched his own mother waste away from an infection when he was 15. The helplessness of it had marked him, made him careful and prepared. He kept medicines now, bought from a traveling doctor, and he knew the signs of serious illness. Through the night he tended her, giving her water whenever she woke enough to drink, changing the cloth, watching the flush in her cheeks. Toward dawn, her fever finally broke, and she fell into a deeper, more natural sleep. Vincent allowed himself to doze in his chair, his long legs stretched out, his dark hair falling across his forehead. The sun was well up when he woke to find her watching him. In the morning light, cleaned of the worst dirt, she looked even younger than he had thought. Her green eyes were clear now, intelligent and assessing. "You are still here," she said softly. "It is my house," Vincent replied, stretching the kinks from his neck. He was 28, too old to be sleeping in chairs. "How do you feel?" "Like I walked through hell." She pushed herself up to sitting, then swayed. He was on his feet in an instant, steadying her. "Sorry, I am weaker than I thought. You nearly died. Weakness is expected." He helped her settle back against the cushions. "Are you hungry? I can make breakfast." "I do not want to be trouble." "Too late for that. You already troubled yourself onto my settee." He saw her face fall and regretted the words, softening his tone. "I am teasing. It is no burden. Let me cook, and then we will talk about finding your family." In the kitchen, Vincent fried bacon and eggs, made coffee strong enough to strip paint, and buttered thick slices of bread. He was not a fancy cook, but he could make food that stuck to the ribs. He heard Hannah moving in the other room, her footsteps slow and careful. When he brought the food out, she had managed to straighten her dress and comb her hair into something less wild. She still looked like she had been dragged behind a horse, but there was color in her cheeks now, and her eyes had lost that glazed look. "Sit at the table," he said. "You need proper food." They ate in silence for a few minutes, Vincent giving her time. She ate delicately at first, then with increasing hunger, and he was glad to see it. Appetite meant recovery. "Thank you," she said finally, setting down her fork. "You saved my life, I know that." "The spring saved your life. I just answered the door." Vincent poured more coffee. "Tell me about your wagon train. How many wagons? Who was leading it?" 15 wagons when we left Independence. A man named Cooper was the wagon master. My father is James Daniels, traveling with my mother Mary and my younger brother Peter. We got caught in that terrible storm, the one with the lightning that seemed to touch the ground everywhere. The oxen panicked, and our wagon broke away. By the time the storm cleared, we could not see the others, and the rain had washed away the tracks. What happened then? Hannah's hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. My father tried to find them. We searched for a day, but the prairie all looks the same. He decided to head west, thinking we would catch up. But that night I woke and they were gone. The wagon, my family, everything. I thought perhaps they had gone to look for water or the trail, so I waited. A whole day I waited. Her voice cracked, but they never came back. I did not know what to do. I started walking, thinking I would find someone, anyone. I had a canteen, but it was empty by the second day. Vincent frowned. "Your family just left you sleeping. That makes no sense. Your father would not do that, I know." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I keep thinking I will wake up and this will all be a bad dream. They must have thought I was in the wagon. My mother was sick with fear, not thinking clearly. Perhaps they believed I had gone to walk with the Johnsons from the wagon behind us, and in the darkness, they just started moving. I do not know. All I know is I woke up alone. It was a cruel story made more cruel by its plausibility. Mistakes happened on the trail and people died from them every day. Vincent had seen families torn apart by less. "I will ride into Leavenworth today," he said. The telegraph office might have word about wagon trains, and the sheriff should know if anyone has reported people missing. You need to rest more before you can travel. "I have no money to pay you," Hannah said quietly. "Everything was in the wagon. I have nothing but the dress I am wearing." "Did I ask for money?" Vincent carried the dishes to the kitchen, uncomfortable with her gratitude. He had been raised to help people in need. It was not something that required payment. "Rest today. Tomorrow we will figure out what comes next." But resting was not in Hannah's nature, he soon discovered. While he was outside tending to morning chores, she had straightened his entire main room, washing dishes and folding blankets. When he came back in, she was sweeping the floor, moving slowly but with determination. "You should be lying down," Vincent said. "I have been lying down all night. I am not an invalid." She leaned on the broom, and he could see the effort it cost her to stay upright. "You have been kind to me. The least I can do is clean." "The least you can do is not collapse on my floor again." They stared at each other for a moment, and then Hannah laughed, a surprised sound that lit up her whole face. "You are very stubborn," says the woman who walked 3 days through the prairie. But Vincent found himself almost smiling. "Fine, clean if you must. But if you faint, I am leaving you where you fall." "Fair enough." He left her to it and rode to town, the 6 miles passing quickly under his horse's steady hooves. Leavenworth was growing, benefiting from the fort and the railroad. The streets bustled with soldiers, cowboys, shopkeepers, and the occasional gambler. Vincent tied his horse outside the telegraph office and went inside. The operator, a nervous man named Sykes, looked up from his key. "Vincent, what brings you to town? Have there been any messages about lost wagon trains, or missing people from a wagon train?" Sykes scratched his chin. "Not that I recall." "Why?" Vincent explained about Hannah, watching the operator's expression shift from curiosity to concern. "That is a hard thing," Sykes said. "Let me check my logs." He flipped through a ledger, running his finger down the pages. "Nothing here about missing people, but that does not mean much. If they are still traveling, they might not know she is gone yet, or they might have sent word somewhere else. Can you send a message to the main stops west of here, asking about the Daniels family or a wagon train led by someone named Cooper?" "I can do that." Sykes pulled out a fresh form. "Might take a few days to hear back, depending on how far they got." Vincent paid for the telegrams and then headed to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Garrett was a solid man, fair and honest, with a reputation for keeping the peace without unnecessary violence. "Vincent Farlow," Garrett said, looking up from his desk. "Don't often see you in town twice in 1 week. I need your help." Vincent told the story again, and Garrett listened carefully, his weathered face thoughtful. "I will put the word out," the sheriff said, "and I will check with the fort. Sometimes the wagon trains stop there for supplies. If this Daniels family comes through, or if anyone reports them missing, I will send word to your ranch. Appreciated." "What are you going to do with the girl in the meantime?" It was a fair question. A young, unmarried woman staying at a bachelor's ranch would set tongues wagging. Vincent had not thought that far ahead. "Keep her safe until we find her family, I suppose. Might want to think about appearances," Garrett said carefully. "People talk. Let them talk. I am not going to throw her out to protect my reputation." Garrett raised his hands. "No one is suggesting that. Just saying you might want to get a chaperone. Maybe Mrs. Chen from the boarding house would be willing to come stay for a bit." Vincent nodded slowly. It was good advice, even if he bristled at needing it. "I will ask her, Mrs. Chen," however, was caring for a sick grandchild and could not leave town. Vincent tried 2 other women he knew, but one was about to give birth, and the other was leaving for her own family visit in St. Louis. In the end, he rode back to the ranch alone, frustrated and worried about what this meant. Hannah was asleep on the settee when he returned, the broom propped against the wall where she had apparently abandoned it mid-task. The house did look cleaner, he had to admit. She had even managed to wash the windows. He made noise in the kitchen, giving her time to wake naturally. When she appeared in the doorway, her hair was loose around her shoulders and she looked very young. "Did you find anything?" she asked. "Sent telegrams, talked to the sheriff. Now we wait." He set a pot of coffee on the stove. "I tried to find a woman to come stay here for propriety, but everyone had reasons they could not. I am sorry about that." Hannah sat down at the table. "I am not worried about propriety right now. I am worried about my family. I know. But other people will talk, and that could make trouble for you. Let them talk." She echoed his words to the sheriff, and he felt a flicker of respect for her spirit. "You saved my life, Vincent. I am not going to repay that by worrying about gossip." Over the next few days, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Hannah was recovering her strength, and with it came a determination to be useful. She cooked meals, mended his shirts, and tended the small vegetable garden behind the house that his mother had planted years ago, and that he had kept going more from stubbornness than skill. She had a quick mind and a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. When he mentioned that his best milk cow was being temperamental, Hannah announced she had grown up visiting her grandmother's farm in Connecticut and knew how to handle dairy cows. Sure enough, she had Bessie producing again within a day. "You are full of surprises," Vincent said, watching her carry the milk pail with easy confidence. "So are you. I did not expect a Kansas rancher to have a collection of Shakespeare in his bookshelf. My mother taught school before she married. She made sure I could read properly." He took the pail from her. "Do you read much?" "Everything I can get my hands on. My father says I would live in a library if I could." The present tense seemed to hurt her, and she looked away. "Says, not said. He is alive. I have to believe that." "We will find them," Vincent said, with more confidence than he felt. But the days stretched on with no word. A week passed, then 2. The telegrams came back negative. No one had seen the Daniels family. The wagon train led by Cooper had been tracked as far as Fort Larned, but there was no record of a family matching their description with it. It was as if they had vanished into the prairie. Hannah took the news hard, retreating into herself for a full day. Vincent let her have her space, understanding that grief needed room. But on the second day, he found her sitting by the spring, her feet bare and her dress hiked up to her knees, cooling herself in the water. "I used to think water was just something that came from a pump," she said as he approached. "In Boston, you turn a handle and there it is. I never thought about where it came from or what it meant to not have it." Vincent sat down on the bank beside her. The spring bubbled up from a ring of rocks, clear and cold even in the summer heat. It had been here longer than the ranch, longer than the fort, probably longer than the Kansa tribe that had lived here before the settlers came. "This spring is why my father claimed this particular piece of land," he said. "The water flows from it year-round, never changes temperature, never stops. In 1860, there was a drought that killed half the cattle in Kansas, but our creek kept running and our grass stayed green. My father made enough money that year selling water rights to buy another 100 acres. So when you said you would give me the spring, you meant everything it touches, All of this. Hannah gestured at the ranch, the rolling grassland, the cattle grazing in the distance. I did not give you the spring, Vincent said, startled. I gave you water from it. No. Hannah turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. That first night you said the spring saved my life, but you have kept me here, fed me, protected me, asked nothing in return. You have shared everything the spring touches. Your home, your food, your time. That is not a small thing, Vincent. He had no words for the emotion that rose in his chest. For 2 weeks, this woman had been living in his house, and he had tried to think of her as a temporary guest, someone who would leave as soon as her family was found. But somewhere in the cooking together and the evening conversations and the way she laughed at his dry jokes, she had become something else. Someone he looked forward to seeing each morning, someone whose sadness hurt him. You deserve help, he finally said. Any decent person would have done the same, but you are the one who did it. She stood up, water dripping from her feet. I should go inside. The sun is getting high. Vincent watched her walk back to the house, and he felt something shifting inside him, like the ground moving beneath his feet. This was dangerous territory. Hannah was a guest, a woman under his protection, someone who would leave as soon as they found her family. He had no right to feel anything beyond friendly concern. But that evening, when she sat across from him at dinner and told him about growing up in Boston, about the smell of the harbor and the sound of church bells, and the way snow looked on the common in winter, he found himself wanting to hear everything. And when she asked about his life, he told her things he had not shared with anyone, about his mother's death and how it had nearly broken his father, about the loneliness of running the ranch alone, about the dreams he had of expanding the herd, of maybe breeding horses, of building something that would last. You love this place, Hannah said softly. It is all I know, all I want, really. He stood to clear the dishes. What about you? What were you going to do in California? Help my father, I suppose. He was opening a shipping office. I was expected to marry eventually, have children, keep a nice home. She made a face. It all seemed very planned out, very predictable, and then the storm came and everything changed. Do you miss it, that planned life? Hannah was quiet for a long moment. I miss my family, but the life. I'm not sure I ever wanted it in the first place. I just did not know there were other options. That night, Vincent lay awake in his bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling and thinking about options. Hannah had been here for 2 weeks, and in that time, she had become part of the rhythm of his days. He liked having her here, more than liked it if he was honest with himself. But what could he offer her? A ranch in Kansas was about as far from Boston society as a person could get. And she was educated, refined, used to a life he could barely imagine. The next morning, a rider came from town with a telegram. Vincent's hands shook slightly as he opened it. Hannah stood in the doorway, her face pale. What does it say? She whispered. A wagon train matching Cooper's description arrived in Denver last week. The sheriff there says there is a family named Daniels with them. Father James, Mother Mary, son Peter. He looked up at her. Hannah, they made it. They are safe. She should have been overjoyed. Instead, she sank into a chair, her expression complicated. They think I am dead. The telegram says they reported a daughter missing, presumed dead after the storm. They have been grieving for you. Vincent crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair. But we can fix that. We will send a telegram right now, let them know you are alive and well. They can come get you, or we can arrange to send you to them, to Denver. Hannah's voice was flat. And then on to California. That was the plan, was it not? She looked at him, really looked at him, and Vincent saw his own confused feelings reflected in her eyes. Yes, that was the plan. He sent the telegram that afternoon, riding hard to town and back. The response came the next day. James Daniels was overjoyed that his daughter was alive and would be taking the next train to Leavenworth to retrieve her. He would arrive in approximately 1 week. 1 week. 7 days. Vincent tried not to count them, but he could not help it. Hannah moved through the house like a ghost, helping with chores but saying little. At night they sat on the porch and watched the stars, and the silence between them grew heavy with things unsaid. On the 4th night, Hannah finally broke. "I do not want to go," Vincent's heart lurched. "What?" "To California, to the life that was planned for me." She turned to him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I know I should want it. My family is there, and they love me, and they must have been devastated thinking I was dead. But Vincent, this is the first time in my life I have felt useful. Needed. The first time I have made my own choices about how to spend my days. You have been useful," he said carefully. "You have helped me more than you know. Then let me stay." The words came out in a rush. "I know it is crazy. We have known each other for 3 weeks. But I feel more at home here on this ranch in the middle of Kansas than I ever did in Boston. And I think, maybe, you feel something too." He should have denied it. Should have been sensible and reminded her that she was young and traumatized and grateful, and that gratitude was not the same as love. But Vincent Farlow had been raised to be honest, and the truth came out before he could stop it. "I do. I feel a great deal, actually. So much that it scares me." He stood up, needing to move. "But Hannah, your family thinks you are dead. They have been mourning you. You cannot just decide not to go back to them." "I know." She wiped at her eyes. "I would never do that. I need to see them to let them know I am truly all right. But after that, cannot I make my own choice about where I want to be?" "What are you saying?" Hannah stood and walked to him, close enough that he could see the pulse beating at her throat. "I am saying that I am 21 years old, and I have spent my whole life doing what was expected of me. My father decided we would go to California, so I went. He decided I would work in his office, so I agreed. I never questioned any of it. But now I have seen that there are other ways to live, and I want this one. I want the ranch and the spring and the cattle. I want to can vegetables and milk cows and watch storms roll in over the prairie. I want to argue with you about how much coffee is too much coffee and listen to you read Shakespeare in that deep voice of yours. I want all of it. You are talking about staying here, with me." "Yes." "People will talk. They already are, probably. I do not care about people talking. Your father might not allow it. You are his daughter. I am of age. He cannot stop me." Vincent caught her hands, holding them carefully. "Hannah, I am a rancher. This is a hard life. Hot summers, cold winters, work from dawn until dark. It is not Boston. It is not parlors and libraries and social events. I know. I have been living it for 3 weeks. 3 weeks in summer when the weather is fair. You have not seen winter. You have not seen what it is like when the river freezes and the cattle need breaking through ice to water. You have not felt wind that cuts through every layer you own. Then let me learn." Her voice was fierce. "Teach me. I am not afraid of hard work, Vincent. I am afraid of wasting my life being decorative." He pulled her closer, unable to help himself. "If you stay, it would not be as a hired hand. You understand that, do not you? It would be as my wife. That is the only way I could keep you here without ruining you." "Is that a proposal?" "It is a statement of fact. I will not have you living here unwed and let people think poorly of you." "That is very noble." Hannah tilted her head up. "But it is also avoiding the question. Do you want me to stay, Vincent? Not out of obligation or protection, but because you want me here." He could feel her heartbeat against his palms where he held her hands. Could smell the lavender soap she used in her hair. Every sensible thought he had ever had was telling him to step back, to let her go to her family and back to her old life. But his heart, that traitorous organ, was screaming something else entirely. "Yes," he said roughly. "God help me, yes, I want you to stay. I want you here every morning and every evening. I want to teach you about the ranch and learn about Boston from you. I want to watch you make this house into a home, which you have already started doing. I want all of it, Hannah, but I cannot ask you to give up your family and your whole life for me. You are not asking. I am offering. She smiled, and it was like sunrise. But I would like to hear you actually propose properly if you are going to insist on marriage. Despite everything, Vincent laughed. You are going to be trouble, are you not? Almost certainly. He released her hands and took a step back, then lowered himself to one knee on the porch boards. Hannah's eyes went wide. Hannah Daniels of Boston, Vincent said, looking up at her. I have known you for 3 weeks, which is not nearly long enough to make a decision like this by any reasonable standard, but nothing about us has been reasonable from the start. You knocked on my door begging for water, and I gave you the spring. Now I am asking you to stay and share everything it touches. Will you marry me? Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. Yes, Vincent, I will. He stood and pulled her into his arms, and when he kissed her, it felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at the same time. She kissed him back with a fierceness that made his heart race, her arms tight around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. Your father is still going to arrive in 3 days. I know. I will explain everything to him. Hannah's confidence wavered slightly. He may not understand, he may not. But you are of age, as you said, and I will stand beside you and face whatever he has to say. James Daniels arrived on the morning train, and Vincent was there to meet him at the station. He was a tall man, gray-haired and distinguished, with the bearing of someone used to authority. When he saw Vincent, he strode forward with his hand extended. You must be Vincent Farlow. I cannot thank you enough for saving my daughter's life. Hannah is a remarkable woman, sir. She saved herself as much as I saved her. I am eager to see her. Is she at your ranch? She is. I brought the wagon so we can take you there directly. The ride was tense, with James asking careful questions about Hannah's condition and what had happened. Vincent answered honestly, leaving out only the part about the proposal. That was Hannah's news to share. When they reached the ranch, Hannah was waiting on the porch. She had put on her best dress, the one Vincent had bought her in town when it became clear her own was beyond saving. Her hair was pinned up, and she looked every inch a proper Boston lady, except for the sun-kissed glow to her skin and the strength in her bearing that had not been there 3 weeks ago. "Papa," she said, and then she was running and James was catching her, both of them crying. Vincent gave them privacy, unhitching the horses and taking his time with the task. When he finally went inside, they were sitting at the table, talking in low voices. Hannah's eyes were red but calm. "Mr. Farlow," James said, standing, "I owe you a debt I cannot possibly repay." "You owe me nothing, sir. I am just glad we could find you. My daughter tells me you want to marry her." Vincent's eyes shot to Hannah, who gave him an apologetic look. "I told him everything. He deserved the truth." "I see." Vincent squared his shoulders. "Yes, sir. I asked Hannah to marry me, and she accepted. I know it seems sudden, and I know you had other plans for her. But I love her, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never regrets choosing me." James studied him for a long moment. "Hannah also tells me that she wants to stay here, even if you had not proposed, that she is not interested in continuing to California. That is her choice to make, not mine." "Is it?" James's voice was sharp. "She is 21 years old and has been through a terrible trauma." "How do I know this is not just gratitude or confusion?" "You do not," Vincent said honestly. "But you raised a smart, capable daughter. Trust her to know her own mind." "Papa," Hannah said softly, "I know this is not what you planned, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I love him, and I love this life. I am not going to California." The argument that followed was painful but necessary. James tried every approach, reminding Hannah of her duty to family, warning her about the hardships of ranch life, suggesting she was too young to know what she wanted. Hannah met each point with calm determination, and Vincent saw where she had gotten her strength. Finally, as the sun was setting, James sat back in his chair and sighed. "You are truly set on this." "I am." "And you," he looked at Vincent, "you will treat her well, give her a good life." "The best I can, sir. I will not pretend it will be easy. Ranch life is hard, but she will be loved and valued every single day." James was quiet for a long time. Then he stood and extended his hand to Vincent. "I cannot say I am happy about this. I had different dreams for my daughter. But she is right that she is of age and can make her own choices. If this is what Hannah wants, I will not stand in her way." The relief on Hannah's face was beautiful to see. She hugged her father tightly. "Thank you, Papa. Thank you for understanding." "I am not sure I understand at all," James said ruefully. "But I love you, and I want you to be happy. If this rancher makes you happy, that will have to be enough." They invited James to stay for the wedding, but he declined. "Your mother and brother are waiting in Denver. They need to know you are alive and well. I will send them your love and your explanation." He looked at Hannah seriously. "But you need to write to them yourself, Hannah. They deserve to hear from you." "I will. I promise." The next morning, Vincent drove James back to the station. Before boarding the train, the older man pulled him aside. "Take care of her," James said. "She is my only daughter, my eldest child. If you hurt her, there is nowhere in this country you can hide from me." "I would not hide, sir. If I hurt her, I would deserve whatever you did to me." Vincent met his gaze steadily. "But I plan to spend my life making her happy instead." James nodded slowly. "She seems different, stronger. Maybe this place is good for her after all." He boarded the train, and Vincent watched it pull away, carrying Hannah's old life with it. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in Leavenworth. Sheriff Garrett stood as Vincent's witness, and Mrs. Chen, recovered from her family crisis, stood for Hannah. The preacher was long-winded, the church was hot, and Vincent's collar felt like it was strangling him. But when Hannah said, "I do," and smiled at him with her whole heart in her eyes, none of that mattered. The ranch became theirs in the truest sense after that. Hannah threw herself into learning everything about cattle and horses, about when to plant and when to harvest, about the delicate balance of water and grass, and whether that made the difference between a good year and a bad one. She had a natural skill with animals, and the horses in particular loved her. Within a month, she was riding out with Vincent to check the herd, her Eastern dresses abandoned for practical split skirts and boots. "You were right about winter," she said one December evening, huddled close to the fire. Outside, wind howled and snow piled against the windows. "This is brutal." Having regrets, Vincent pulled a blanket around both of them. "Not even one." She kissed his jaw. "Though I would not mind if spring came a little early this year." They made it through that first winter, and then through the spring floods and the summer heat. Hannah wrote long letters to her family, telling them about ranch life, and they wrote back with news of California. Her brother Peter was thriving in school. Her mother had joined a ladies' society. Her father's business was doing well. They sent an open invitation to visit, and Hannah promised they would come when they could spare the time. But time was always scarce on the ranch. There were cattle to tend, fences to mend, horses to train. Vincent taught Hannah to rope and brand. She taught him to make apple pie like her grandmother used to make. They worked side by side through long days and fell into bed exhausted and happy each night. In the spring of 1880, Hannah announced she was pregnant. Vincent had never seen her so radiant or so sick. The morning sickness lasted well into the afternoon, and there were days she could barely keep food down. But she refused to slow down, insisting on doing her share of the work, until Vincent physically carried her back into the house one day when she nearly fainted by the barn. "You are going to rest," he said firmly, depositing her on the settee where they had first met. "The ranch will survive without you for a few hours. But the new calves need checking, and the fence in the east pasture needs repair, and I will handle all of it. You will stay here and grow our child and stop trying to do everything yourself." Hannah glared at him, but there was affection in it. "You are very bossy when you want to be. I learned from the best." He kissed her forehead. "Rest, Hannah, please." Their son was born in November during the first snowfall of the season. The midwife from town barely made it through the drifts in time. Vincent paced the floor of his own house like a caged animal, listening to Hannah's cries from the bedroom and feeling more helpless than he ever had in his life. When the midwife finally emerged, smiling, Vincent nearly collapsed with relief. "You have a healthy son, Mr. Farlow, and your wife is doing just fine." Hannah was pale and exhausted, her hair damp with sweat, but her smile when he entered the room was pure joy. "Come meet your son," she said softly. The baby was tiny and red-faced, with a surprising amount of dark hair. Vincent touched one impossibly small hand, and the infant's fingers curled around his in a grip that felt like it reached straight to his heart. "He is perfect," Vincent whispered. "We should name him after your father, Thomas Vincent Farlow. Are you sure? He would have been a grandfather. He deserves to be remembered." They called the baby Thomas, and he grew fat and happy on Hannah's milk and the endless attention of two besotted parents. That first year was exhausting in ways Vincent had not anticipated. Thomas was colicky and did not sleep well, and there were nights when both he and Hannah walked the floor, taking turns soothing the crying baby while the other tried to catch a few minutes of rest. But Thomas also brought a joy that transformed everything. The first time he smiled at Vincent, the rancher felt something in his chest expand almost painfully. The first time he laughed, Hannah cried happy tears. When he took his first wobbling steps, they both cheered like he had accomplished something impossible. The ranch continued to thrive. Word had spread about the quality of Vincent's cattle and the reliability of his water source. He was able to expand the herd, buy more land, hire a few hands to help with the work. Hannah proved to have a head for numbers and took over the ranch accounts, discovering ways to save money and increase profits that Vincent had never thought of. "You should have been running a business all along," Vincent said, watching her work through the ledgers one evening. "I am running a business. This business, our business." Hannah looked up at him. "I know you owned it before we married, but it feels like ours now. Is that all right?" "It is more than all right. I could not do any of this without you." It was the simple truth. Hannah had become integral to every aspect of the ranch, from the books to the animals to the land itself. When Thomas was 2, Hannah became pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy was easier. Their daughter was born on a warm May evening in 1883, with far less drama than her brother's arrival. She came into the world quietly, looking around with solemn, dark eyes. "She is going to be a thinker, this one," the midwife said, handing the baby to Hannah. "Look how she watches everything." They named her Mary after Hannah's mother, and the name suited her. She was a calm baby, content to observe the world from her mother's arms. Thomas was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to feedings. "Gentle," Hannah reminded him constantly. "She is very small." "I know, Mama, I am being gentle." The ranch house that had once seemed too big for just Vincent now felt perfectly sized, filled with the noise and chaos of a growing family. Vincent built additions as they were needed. A larger bedroom for the children, a proper office for Hannah, a covered porch where they could sit on summer evenings and watch the sunset while the children played. In 1885, Hannah's family finally made the trip from California to visit. It had been 7 years since she had seen them, and when the wagon rolled up to the house, she was nearly vibrating with excitement and nerves. Mary Daniels emerged first, older and grayer than Vincent had imagined, but with Hannah's same green eyes. James had aged well, his distinguished bearing now mixed with the success of a prosperous businessman. And Peter, who had been 14 when Hannah disappeared from their lives, was now a young man of 21, tall and serious. The reunion was tearful and joyful. Mary could not stop hugging Hannah and exclaiming over the grandchildren. James shook Vincent's hand with genuine warmth. Peter was quiet, studying the ranch with an evaluating eye. "You have done well for yourself," James said to Vincent that evening after dinner. They were sitting on the porch while Hannah caught up with her mother inside. "The ranch is impressive. We have been fortunate, and Hannah has a talent for this life that I never expected. She seems happy, truly happy." James's voice was thoughtful. "I will admit I had my doubts. But I can see now that this is where she belongs." "It means a lot to hear you say that, sir." The visit lasted 2 weeks, and by the end of it, even Peter seemed convinced that his sister had made the right choice. "I thought you were crazy," he told Hannah on their last evening. "Running off to marry a rancher you barely knew, but I can see why you did it. This place suits you." "Come back and visit again," Hannah urged. "Bring a wife next time. I want to meet whoever wins your heart." Peter laughed. "If anyone ever does, you will be the first to know." After they left, the ranch felt quiet, but it was a good quiet. Hannah was at peace, having shown her family that she was not just surviving but thriving. And Vincent was grateful to have met the people who had raised the woman he loved. The years rolled on, each bringing its own challenges and triumphs. In 1887, a drought tested their resources, but the spring kept flowing and they made it through. In 1889, a harsh winter killed some of their cattle, but they had diversified enough that the loss did not break them. In 1891, Hannah gave birth to their third child, another son they named Peter after her brother. He was a wild child from the start, always escaping his crib and getting into trouble, and Vincent joked that he was being paid back for all the grief he had given his own parents. Thomas grew into a serious young man who loved the land as much as his father did. Mary was book smart and thoughtful, always asking questions about everything. And Peter, the baby, was pure mischief and energy. "Our family is complete," Hannah said one evening, watching the 3 children play by the creek while she and Vincent sat in their favorite spot by the spring. 3 healthy children, a successful ranch, and you. I could not ask for more." "You could ask for a day off," Vincent teased. "When was the last time we just sat and did nothing? I am sitting and doing nothing right now. You are mentally planning what to make for dinner. I can see it in your face." Hannah laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know me too well. Not possible. I could spend a lifetime learning you and still find new things." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. The spring bubbled beside them, constant and unchanging, the same as it had been the night Hannah stumbled to Vincent's door begging for water. But everything else had changed. The desperate, lost woman and the lonely rancher had become partners, lovers, parents, friends. They had built a life together that neither could have imagined in those first confused days. "You ever think about that night?" Hannah asked softly. "When I knocked on your door, all the time, I think about how close you came to dying. How easily you could have walked a different direction and never found this place. I was meant to find you, I believe that. Hannah lifted her head to look at him. Some things are just meant to be. I used to think that was nonsense, but then you arrived and everything changed. So maybe you are right. As the children grew older, they each found their place on the ranch. Thomas took to cattle ranching like he had been born to it, often riding out with Vincent for days at a time during roundup. Mary, to everyone's surprise, turned out to have a gift for horse training and began working with the ranch's growing stable of horses. Peter, true to his wild nature, became an expert tracker and could find lost cattle or strayed horses faster than anyone. In 1898, when Thomas was 18, he announced that he wanted to start his own herd on a section of the ranch land. Vincent agreed immediately, proud of his son's ambition. They drew up papers making it official, and Thomas threw himself into the work with the same dedication Vincent had shown at that age. Mary, at 16, declared that she wanted to go to college. It was an unusual ambition for a rancher's daughter, but Hannah supported her completely. She has a brilliant mind, Hannah told Vincent. We should not waste it just because she is a girl. I am not arguing. If she wants to go to college, we will find a way to make it happen. Vincent had been shaped by his mother's love of learning and would never deny his daughter the same. They sent Mary to the State University in Lawrence, where she studied animal science and agriculture. She came home for holidays full of new ideas about breeding programs and land management, and Vincent implemented every suggestion that made sense. The ranch continued to thrive under their combined efforts. Peter, the youngest at 13, was already talking about becoming a lawman like Sheriff Garrett, who had become a family friend over the years. Vincent suspected that would change a dozen more times before the boy settled on anything, but he supported Peter's dreams, whatever they might be. On their 20th wedding anniversary in 1899, Vincent took Hannah back to the spot by the spring where they had first really talked, where she had told him she wanted to stay. He had arranged for Thomas to watch the younger children so they could have an evening alone, a rare luxury. 20 years, Hannah said, settling beside him on the blanket he had spread. It has gone so fast, and so slow, all at once. I remember everything about those first days like it was yesterday, but I also feel like you have always been here. I have, in a way. This is the only real home I have ever had. Hannah looked out over the ranch, the land golden in the evening light. Do you know what I was thinking that day I woke up alone on the prairie? What? That I was going to die. And I was not even sad about missing California or the life my father had planned. I was sad that I had never really lived, never made a choice of my own, never done anything that mattered. She turned to him. And then I found you and everything changed. You gave me a life worth living, Vincent. You gave me the same thing. This ranch was just land and cattle before you. You made it a home. You made me a better man. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Hannah's eyes widened. You already gave me a ring 20 years ago, she said. Open it. Inside was a necklace, delicate gold chain with a small pendant in the shape of a water drop, embedded with a single emerald that matched her eyes. It is beautiful, Hannah breathed. I wanted to give you something to mark this anniversary. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of building a life together. Vincent took the necklace and fastened it around her neck. The water drop is for the spring. The emerald is for your eyes, which I fell in love with before I even knew your name. Hannah touched the pendant, tears spilling down her cheeks. I do not deserve you. You deserve everything. Vincent kissed her softly. Everything the spring touches, remember, that was my promise, and I have spent 20 years trying to live up to it. They made love under the stars that night, and it was sweet and familiar and new all at once, the way it had been for 2 decades. When they finally lay together in the darkness, wrapped in blankets and each other, Hannah whispered. I would do it all again. Every hard day, every difficulty. I would choose this life and you every single time. Even the winter of '85, when we thought we would lose everything, even that, especially that, we survived it together. As the new century dawned, the Farlow Ranch was known throughout Kansas as one of the most successful operations in the state. Vincent's cattle were prized for their quality, and Hannah's business acumen had turned a profitable ranch into a genuinely wealthy one. But more than the success, it was the family that made the place special. Neighbors spoke of the Farlows with respect and affection, noting how they treated their ranch hands fairly and helped their community in times of trouble. In 1902, Thomas married a girl from town named Sarah, and they built a house on his section of the ranch. Vincent watched his son settle into married life with a knowing smile, remembering his own early days with Hannah. Mary graduated from college in 1903 and, to everyone's shock, announced that she was not coming back to the ranch permanently. She had been offered a position at the university, studying cattle breeding programs. Hannah cried, but they were proud tears. She is doing what makes her happy, Hannah said, wiping her eyes. That is all we can ask. She learned that from you, Vincent said. You taught all our children that they could choose their own paths. Peter did become a lawman after all, joining the sheriff's office in Leavenworth at 19. He was good at it, combining his tracking skills with a natural sense of justice. Sheriff Garrett, now retired, told Vincent that Peter was the best deputy he had seen in 40 years of law enforcement. As Vincent and Hannah grew older, they slowly handed over the day-to-day operations of the ranch to Thomas and his growing family. By 1910, Vincent was 59 and Hannah was 53, and while they were both still active, they were content to let the next generation take the lead. They spent more time by the spring, that constant source of water that had brought them together and sustained them through everything. It was still the heart of the ranch, still flowing clear and cold. You think it will ever stop? Hannah asked one day, trailing her fingers in the water. The spring? No. It has been here longer than any of us and will be here long after we are gone. That is comforting in a way, that something constant remains. Hannah nodded. Yes, that is comforting. In 1915, Thomas and Sarah gave them their first great-grandchild, a girl they named Hannah. Vincent watched his wife hold the baby, saw the tears of joy on her face, and felt his heart swell with gratitude for every choice and chance that had led to this moment. What are you thinking? Hannah asked, catching his eye over the baby's head. That I am the luckiest man who ever lived. Because of this beautiful baby. Because of you. Because 37 years ago you knocked on my door begging for water and I gave you the spring, and you gave me everything that mattered. Hannah smiled, that same smile that had captured his heart all those years ago. We gave it to each other. They lived to see all their children settled and happy, to see their grandchildren grow, to celebrate 50 years of marriage in 1919. The party was held at the ranch, with family and friends coming from across Kansas and beyond. Mary traveled from the university. Peter came with his wife and 3 children. Thomas and his family were there, of course, along with dozens of neighbors and ranch hands past and present. Sheriff Garrett, now ancient but still sharp, raised a toast to Vincent and Hannah Farlow, who proved that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. May their love continue to inspire us all. Hear, hear, the crowd cheered. That night, after everyone had left and the ranch was quiet again, Vincent and Hannah walked to the spring one more time. Their steps were slower now, their bodies marked by time and hard work, but their hands were clasped tight. 50 years, Vincent said. Half a century. It was not long enough. I want 50 more, greedy woman. But his voice was tender. They sat by the spring, and Hannah rested her head on Vincent's shoulder, just as she had done thousands of times before. The water bubbled and flowed, constant and eternal. "Tell me the story again," Hannah said softly. "What story?" "About the night we met." Vincent smiled. "It was July 1878. I was 28 years old, running the ranch alone, thinking I would probably live and die a bachelor. And then there was this knock at my door, so faint I almost missed it. When I opened it, the most beautiful woman I had ever seen collapsed into my arms, begging for water. I was not beautiful. I was a disaster. You were beautiful, terrifying and beautiful." He squeezed her hand. "I gave you water, and you looked at me with those green eyes, and something in my chest shifted. I did not know it then, but I was already falling in love. I fell in love watching you take care of me. You were so gentle, so patient. You made me feel safe for the first time in days. And then you stayed. You gave me the spring and everything it touched. How could I leave?" They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The spring flowed on, as it had for longer than anyone could remember, as it would for years to come. It had been the source of life for Vincent's family, the foundation of their prosperity, the witness to their love story. In the years that followed, Vincent and Hannah gradually slowed down, as all people must. But their love never diminished. They spent their days in the house they had made a home, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management, and both Vincent and Hannah took deep satisfaction in seeing how well he had learned his lessons. Mary became a renowned expert in her field, publishing papers and teaching the next generation of ranchers. Peter rose to become sheriff, respected for his fairness and integrity. All three children credited their success to the example set by their parents, two people who had taken a chance on love and built something remarkable together. Vincent Farlow died peacefully in his sleep in 1925, at the age of 75. He had lived a full life, rich in love and accomplishment. Hannah held his hand as he slipped away, and her last words to him were, "Thank you for the spring. Thank you for everything." Hannah lived another 3 years, still sharp and active well into her 70s. She spent her remaining time working with the younger children on the ranch, telling them stories of the old days, teaching them about the land and the spring and the importance of water in this dry country. On a warm July evening in 1928, exactly 50 years after she had knocked on Vincent's door, Hannah walked to the spring one final time. She sat on the bank, trailing her fingers in the cool water, and thought about everything that had flowed from that single moment of desperation. Thomas found her there the next morning, a peaceful smile on her face, the spring bubbling beside her. She was buried next to Vincent on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land and the spring forever. Their story became legend in Kansas, told and retold as an example of how love can bloom in the most unexpected circumstances. The spring still flows today, more than a century later, still providing water to the Farlow Ranch, still touching everything around it with life and possibility. And sometimes, on quiet summer evenings, people swear they can see two figures sitting by the water, hands clasped, watching over the land they loved and the family they built together. The lesson of Vincent and Hannah's love was simple but profound. Generosity begets generosity, kindness creates connection, and sometimes the greatest gifts we can give are the ones that cost us nothing but mean everything. Vincent gave Hannah water when she was dying of thirst. She gave him purpose when he was dying of loneliness. Together, they gave each other a life of meaning, passion, and joy. The spring continues to flow, as constant as the love that began beside it, as eternal as the bond between two souls who found each other against all odds and chose, every day, to build something beautiful together.